Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by the great folks over at Greta, a great spot for all games, home and away. We were there for the Canucks Army viewing party, and we'll be there for all the other ones all season long in case you missed the first one. It's going to be a good time. It's always a good time at Greta. Come by before, after the game, or whatever event you're downtown for with weekly drink specials. Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Patrick Johnston joins me on today's show as my co-host today. Patrick Johnston of the Province and the Vancouver Sun. Harman Dial, our pal, is on the road. So Patrick, thanks
on
so much
the
for
road.
joining me.
Be clear. He's enjoying the sunshine. It's been piss and rain since he left.
Yes.
Let's be clear. He's in a much better spot than us. Although I'm happily in my office, and I think you're happily in your little. Is that your office? Well, I don't know what you even call it.
Yeah, this is
your podcast studio.
Office. Yeah. So have I told you the story, or have you seen the story of these socks behind me?
Is this going to be as overcooked as you talking about Elias Pettersson's shift? I mean,
the shift. Thank you. It's called the shift.
Tell me the story, David.
My lovely fiance, who you know very well, was scrolling Instagram and there was a targeted ad of like, oh, Canucks equipment sale or whatever. So she clicks on it and then she's like, socks. How can I buy socks for $10? That's hilarious. So she bought game used socks and they're an extra large and there's like a shot block mark on one of them. And I'm 90% sure they're either like a Luke Shen or a Tyler Myers. Ian Cole. They might be Ian Cole.
Tyler Myers would wear like triple XL.
I should ask him what his sock size is. But anyway, so that's the story of how those got behind me. It's a great story, Patrick. Just like the shift that Elias Pettersson turned in the dying moments of the Canucks win over San Jose. We're going to talk about that and so much more on today's show. But first, I want to tell you about our partner who Patrick was out supporting, boots on the ground, the Vancouver Whitecaps. The Caps won last night. The Caps take home the victory. Now they force a Game 3 against LAFC. That one's on the road, but be sure to support the Whitecaps. Just keep watching Whitecaps games.
Look at Brian White. Look at him. Best striker they ever had. And that's him cheering after even, in fact, that's him celebrating a goal that he didn't get credit for, although he did all the work. It was an own goal. LAFC, 2 own goals. I understand why they call them own goals, but it's still unsatisfying to say it that way.
Vanni Sartini is such a great character. I love him so much. I didn't realize like how long ago has he been hired? Because it's like been news to me recently.
It's funny. I was looking at 2021.
Really?
End of the summer 2021. Yeah, Mark Dos Santos was not working. So they dumped him, and then Vanni they came back. They played a couple games. This was right before they started letting people back in the stands. So Vanni came back and took over the Whitecaps and had a really great finish to the season. And sort of force of willed his way back into employment. And he's been their coach ever since. He's got some haters, but he's a positive, upbeat guy. And when his team is all together, like it has been for these 2 playoff games, they look pretty good.
There's the selling point right there. Patrick, you basically just did that ad read for me. Go and support the Vancouver Whitecaps, folks. That's why you're here. Let's get into it. Let's get into Saturday night's victory. A slim victory over San Jose Sharks. The Vancouver Canucks take that one by a final score of 3-2. There's a lot to get to, and I know I'm overhyping the shift. I know we're going to talk about it eventually, but it's kind of the last thing about that game, right? Is the shift that we saw from Elias Pettersson, which Wyatt in the Stanchies over at CanucksArmy.com called a huge, massive shift. Which some people misread, but a huge, massive shift for Elias Pettersson. We'll talk about it at the tail end of this conversation. But I want to start, I always start in goal. Kevin Lankinen, once again, stellar. The Canucks give up a lot of odd man rushes. Once again, Kevin Lankinen was really good. And this was the thing that I wrote about when I wrote Instant Reaction over at CA, PJ, was that at the start of the game against the Devils, now I know the Canucks didn't score, so it wasn't on the goaltender. You can't score if you don't win. Or you can't win if you don't score. Other way around. Archer Shelovs lets in the first shot he faces, which was on a 2-on-1 odd man rush. Oof. Lankinen faces a 3-on-1. Again, same sort of thing. Like he gets the shot against him and he's ready to go. Like he makes the save. And like, this is the thing. Everybody was saying, and I know I'm a big Shelovs truther, but everybody's saying like, oh, don't even talk about Shelovs. Like he's not the problem. Those were all really high danger chances. And those were really hard to stop. You're allowed to stop the high danger chances. Like, Kevin Lankinen's teaching us that you're allowed to stop those shots. So I'm not trying to make this a thing about Archer Shelovs not being good enough or anything, but like he hasn't been good enough. He hasn't given them good enough NHL goaltending. And once again, we saw above that with Kevin Lankinen, above and beyond Kevin Lankinen once again.
I liked how you put that. You're allowed to stop the difficult shots. I mean, that has been exactly the problem. That was the worry the Vancouver Canucks had going into the season. And J-Pat and I talked about this on Rinkwide the other night. Think about training camp. Like, they started training camp without Kevin Lankinen. They had Archer Shilovs, Yuri Patera,
Dylan
Nikita
Ferguson,
Tolopilo, some guy named Dylan Ferguson. You know, that was not going to be a sustainable scenario. As much as you wanted to think, hey, Yuri Patera, but like, come on, get real. Lankinen was such amazing good fortune for this team. The fact that he was sitting out there, no one else had signed him. I still don't understand why, especially in a universe when you're throwing money around. I mean, listen, when you're throwing money around, like Jake Unger and Jeremy Swayman, listen, great goalies. Don't get me wrong, but like, you're throwing millions and millions around at these guys, and you don't have to spend $1 million to have Kevin Lankinen. Like, there is a real sort of valuation of the position situation going on. And I mean, he's been fantastic. And like, literally, where would the Canucks be without him? Right?
I've had that thought many times, and it's not a good thought. When you start exploring that, you realize that they wouldn't be doing very well. He's gotten them all their wins. Like, he's legitimately gotten them all of their wins. And I mean that as he's the winning goaltender, and we know there's been at least a few nights where he is the reason that they win. I don't know if I'd say that about San Jose, but that game was really close with him playing really well. So maybe you could chalk it up as one that they win because of Kevin Lankinen once again.
Listen, San Jose's not very good. Like, the Canucks were the better team most of the night. Even if their power play was still kind of, I mean, they got shots off, whatever. But the fact that the Canucks deserved to win the game, the fact that they won the game in the last minute of the game, that's what it took. Not great in the overall picture, but they won the game, and that's, in the end, we're going to sit back and be like, that's all that matters.
This is a good comment from Brad, and I want to read it. It's not anyone else presented by White Spot just yet, but it is a good comment in the YouTube chat that I want to read. Brad said, so Shilovs has played average and Lankinen has played excellent. Seems to me that is an indictment on this team's defense. Excellent is needed to cover up the warts. Yes, like that's what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to say. When I say you're allowed to stop the high danger chances, I mean this team is giving up high danger chances. So you need a goalie that is going to stop them right now. Speaking of which, Thatcher Demko rumored to be back in the next couple weeks potentially. I think Darren Drager, our pal, was on. Harrison Price today said it's within 3 weeks.
And that certainly lines up. Like, listen, it lines up. If you do the math, you see the shots that he was taking. I talked about the Sasquatch video, right? Like, we're looking for Sasquatch at this point. The video that was posted on Saturday of him taking shots. I mean, listen, there were things we didn't see. There were movements we didn't see, but what we did see was a goalie taking shots, and that's a big deal. That is a big deal. If you are looking at how far Demko's had to come. Like, would be a couple of weeks just from watching that. If all things progress as you would hope, it is a pretty easy bet that he's a couple of weeks away from playing.
They're gonna need him. Do
you throw him in right away, Dave? Do you throw him in, or do you try to get him?
No,
send him.
He's Kevin Lankinen's backup. He's Kevin Lankinen's backup.
Okay,
like, I'm not joking. Like, when he's ready, you get him a start when he's really ready. But like, I think he should be the backup to start. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. And again, I know people are making the joke of, can Demko wrestle back the crease from Lankinen? This is a good thing. Like this is great. This is great for Thatcher Demko. He hasn't had to rush back. Now he's going to be able to just ease himself in. It's not going to be Thatcher. We're bleeding chances and we're not playing well at all. And we keep losing games because our goalies aren't able to bail us out like you are. So you're getting 90% of the starts. Like, no, that's Lankinen's job now. Like, that Lankinen's holding that down. So in my mind, like, you go to Lankinen, and Lankinen's your guy. Like, and again, I'm calling him Kevin Lankinen's backup is more making a joke. Make sure that's in the clip if you include that, Jacob. But the one thing I will say is, like, the Canucks really can be flexible. It's not a matter of like, okay, for Thatcher Demko, even, like, he doesn't need to feel the pressure of, like, if I'm not playing, we're not winning games, which is what it's been in past years, right? We think back to Colin Delia, we think back to Spencer Martin, and we get very, very sad. But it is a luxury for the Canucks that they are able to ease Demko back in and just have Kevin Lankinen play the bulk of the games, which I think is how he's going to be deployed. Definitely, at least to start out, you got to be careful. You got to be really careful. And honestly, that November schedule, like we talked about it, I'd give him the softest opponents you can to start. Like that would be his.
Well, he's the backup. That's what you do, right?
That's what you do. That's right. There you go. That's right. You give your
Cody
backup.
S. Cody S. Shout out to Cody S. He's Kevin Woodley's backup. Yes, absolutely. We're all playing backup to Kevin Woodley. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, let's move out of the crease. This conversation went on too long. This is why Harman is when he's my usual co-host, he keeps me in check from talking about goalies for too long. So I apologize to the listeners. PJ is just learning how to keep me in check on goalies.
No, I'm just having. I gotta call you out. You know, if you want to go on something, you're just opening up all kinds of doors. So
love it. Let's go to the door on defense. Once again, like it's not even a story. Almost as much as Kevin Lankinen playing well isn't a story. It's not a story that like the second pair wasn't good again. Tyler Myers and Carson Soucy, another not great night from them, I thought, against San Jose. But I don't think we have to beat the dead horse. I think we're just waiting for them to have a positive game.
A positive game? I mean, that's what does that look like? Not looking terrible, or what's the bar here?
Let's like not bleed chances, and let's see if we can keep the high danger chances to a minimum when you're on the ice. And
so
again,
so doing what they should be doing.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to be clear here. Right.
Some more
since you're later going to give credit up to people who are just showing up doing their job.
Oh, don't even start with me on that. The shift talk is coming soon. But in all seriousness, PJ, like this team gave up a ton of odd man rushes in that game. The defenseman, that includes Soucy and Myers, the defenseman pinching is like a real problem, just at the wrong time and not going through guys. You're seeing it, and the odd man rushes are a real problem for this team.
I mean, you play the way that they're wanting to play, which is a little more open, a little more loose. That's going to happen, right? But the way they have been giving them up is not good, and it demands a lot of your goalies. Like the good news is that the Canucks still are one of the more stingy defensive teams in the NHL. Like the overall picture is good, and I think that might be one of the reasons why these rush chances stand out so much is because there's so few of them. But yeah, the ones that we've seen, like think back to the New Jersey game and how bad things were. The overall picture definitely needs work, and there's a reason why Rick Tocchet's been talking about it. There's a reason why Rick Tocchet had his guys skating lines. It wasn't sort of anything more than, guys, we got to dial it up here a little bit. We got to get a little more pay attention. We got to work hard. We got to just be a little more on our toes on everything we do, because mistakes can be compounded and they can lead to needing to get until the final minute of the game to beat the San Jose Sharks instead of destroying them in the first or second period the way you should have.
Final thing for me on D-zone coverage, you're talking about rush chances. Fabian Zetterlund was wide open in front of Kevin Lankinen right at the end of that game. He missed the shot. Like he missed at batting at the puck.
Yeah, true.
Go watch that play if you can.
Oh, yeah.
3 guys below the goal line. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? And Myers and Soucy were 2 of them. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you running? Like, it's like watching Nikita Triamkin defend. Just sometimes he goes behind the net and you're not ready for it and you don't know why he's there. Like, Tocchet would have, and again, it's not a talking point because Zetterlund missed the shot. Like, he swung and he missed. But if Fabian Zetterlund, I'd say even gets a shot off there or like scores, Rick Tocchet's blowing a gasket post game, especially if the Canucks go on to lose that game. Like that could have sent it to overtime 3-3. That was just the wildest defensive coverage I've seen. And again, that's not even defending off the rush. That's just like not having your man. And hell, even like, is it fair to say that the Michael Granlund goal, the one that made it 2-2 late with the Sharks net pulled, where's JT Miller on that play? And again, I think it was also Soucy and Myers on the ice on that one as well. I'm not sure about that actually, but no one was defending. No one was picking up the man. And I know it's 6-on-5, but like the center, JT Miller on that line, just he wasn't really part of the play. He was kind of floating in the middle. It was like vintage JT. It's been what we've seen before. So that was bad enough. But then to follow that up after Pius Suter, who somehow we haven't talked about yet, after Pius Suter scores that goal, somehow you then leave Fabian Zetterlund, who, let's be honest, is one of the Sharks' most dangerous players. You leave him wide open in the slot. Like, the Canucks have problems right now, and they won, and it should be way more positive than the show started so far. But, like, I came away from that game just thinking, like, oh, my goodness, like, what is going on? There's just rush chances against, and it's like, you know what, and we're all going to go below the goal line as well.
Those in-zone defensive breakdowns are what are concerning me more than the rush stuff.
Fair.
Because those are ones they can control. And a better team would do better. Like that's just, I mean, we saw it. We saw it against Carolina. We saw it against New Jersey. The difference is San Jose is just not very good. So, yeah.
Pius Suter. Pius Suter is very good.
Yeah.
Pius Suter with a 2-goal game, including the game-winning goal when he's playing with Elias Pettersson and Connor Garland. We're not going to get to the shift just yet.
Thank God.
He scores a goal, a nice pass by Nils Höglander on that first goal, dropped the puck back to Suter, and Suter wiring it past Mackenzie Blackwood. It was a really solid game for Pius Suter. It's been a bit of a slow start for him. A guy that, let's be honest, PJ, like, he was a staple on that Miller-Boeser line, especially down the stretch and into the playoffs.
But people forget how boring his game is, right? Like, he's a guy that just doesn't make mistakes. Like, you never go, oh man, what is Suter doing, right? Like, he's that guy. So of course his start of his season was quiet, and he had a little injury, and maybe started just sort of not at 100% or whatever. But he certainly reminded us on Saturday why he is such an effective player. Why he spent so long. I mean, don't forget, Miller and Boeser and Suter were like the best possession line in the NHL for when they were together last season. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I know that was a thing. And so it's no surprise that he would be an effective forward. I did like when they were going with the Garland Höglander wing pair with Pettersson. I thought that the idea was right there. Suter's a better hockey player than Höglander. And so from that standpoint, maybe it makes just a little more long-term sense. Certainly a lot of potential there, and a player that I think the Canucks have been very, very happy with, and proved to be a very correct signing for them when they grabbed him 2 years ago or last year. I guess it's only last year. So.
And I mean, that's that flexibility, right? Like Talkett spoke about at the start of the year, how he envisioned Suter being a center. It's that flexibility that he brings that is really going to make him valuable. I think we can pivot that a little bit. We'll talk about the shift in a second. I really want to talk about it. Maybe we'll save it for anyone else. Let's actually get to our poll question here, which is brought to you by our friends over at Square. If you run a restaurant, you're too busy for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing and new locations opening. You need to get more customers and keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square, because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to square.ca and see why Square is big in restaurants. All right, let's get to our poll question, which is simple. Today, we're asking, do you want to see Pius Suter get a longer look on Elias Pettersson's wing? 77.2% of voters, including Canucks head coach Rick Tocchet, I assume, voted yes, and 22.8% said no, which pivots us pretty easily into the practice lines today in Anaheim, courtesy of our pal Harman Dial. You see Pius Suter here with Elias Pettersson, Connor Garland, on that second line. DeBrusk, Miller-Boeser continues to get a run. And the fourth line, people are pointing this out as well. Arshdeep Bains on the fourth line. I'm expecting them to recall Aatu Räty here. And I think Harman reported it as well.
Harm basically saying that. I guess they just wrapped up practice.
Yeah,
Tocchet said he'll be talking to Elvine shortly in a call possible to fill a fourth line center spot. Tocchet name checked Räty as an option. I mean, that's as close to a guy saying, yes,
he's coming.
It's going to be him.
Yeah, and they've been accruing a lot of cap space. We wrote about this at Canucks Army today. Patrick, they're looking at like $5.5 million.
This is what they wanted to. Yeah, what they want to do. By the way, good question here. LC 520. No, LC 250 can. Joshua plays center. His face. Yeah, I mean, he has played center in the past. The Canucks have never viewed him as a center option. I think they do like him as a winger. But certainly him being able to take draws on penalty killing, stuff like that makes a difference. But I wouldn't expect him to come back in the lineup to play fourth line center. That's just not how they line things up here.
I'm assuming he comes back for Thursday, not tomorrow. Like we were talking to Frank Saravalli last week, and he said maybe Tuesday, probably Thursday. Yeah. And just him not being part of these line rushes makes me think Thursday.
Yeah. I think it's a guarantee. I'll just cut you. I think it's a guarantee. If he's not in those line rushes today, like they're not the way Rick Tocchet runs things, they'll have this full practice today. Tomorrow will be a very optional morning skate. Yeah. And so this is your look. Like this is your lineup here, basically. Yeah. Although, surprising that they're going back to Brandstrom, Desharnais, but they've invested in Desharnais. They believe in Desharnais. They need him to be a thing. I suppose playing against the Ducks is the kind of game he should be able to do well in. But yeah, if you don't see Joshua in there on a lineup on a line full time, he's still not quite there yet. And it's pretty obvious with the Bains thing that they're bringing Räty, almost certainly Räty up, I think.
Yeah, and a quick thing from Harman here, who also reported this. He said Derek Forbort was shaken up during a drill and has left practice early, favoring his leg. He still skated as an extra, though, so the point still stands that they were probably going to go with Brandstrom Desharnais anyways, but it's still something to keep an eye on, as we saw Brandstrom Forbort get last game against San Jose. So we'll see Brandstrom Desharnais back together against those Anaheim Ducks. Anything else about this lineup that strikes you other than the fact that, yes, we're going to see Aatu Ratu? Who again, like Ratu's been playing really well in Abbotsford.
Was 2 goals on Sunday?
No, that was Lekkermäki that scored 2 goals. It was 3 points for
3 points. That's what. Sorry,
on Saturday, and then 2 goals for Lekkermäki on Sunday, which also kind of brings me to my next thing. We'll get to it in anyone else. But I think we're going to see a Lekkermäki recall. I'll talk about it in anyone else. There's a lot of questions in the chat about Baines and Brandstrom, if they actually have to report to Abbotsford if they're papered down. My understanding is no, but if it's a game day, they have to. That's why it didn't happen yesterday, because the Abbotsford Canucks played, so you can't send them down and then not play them. You don't have
to like be in the building or whatever.
Yes, there's rules around that. That's my understanding.
Yeah, it used to be they had to actually go sit in the airport, I think, or something like that. Like I remember back in the day, when they first started figuring out roster shenanigans on day of kind of thing, like I remember this with like Corey Schneider and Eddie Lack, and like they had to like send one guy. They actually had to put him on an airplane, but then he could leave, or it was just stupid. So now I think it's exactly what you just said, is that if there's a game day, you have to send the guy out there. If it's not, it's sort of pending assignment or whatever, because you can say whatever, like the guy couldn't get there in time, or he couldn't get into traffic, or blah 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 blah, which is partly it is a secondary reason why they wanted to have the team in Abbotsford, so they could do stuff like this. When they're in Utica, they were just never able to do that. Not that Jim Benning's Canucks were ever in a cap position to accrue cap space, but in theory they could have been. So there we go.
Aatu Ratu is in California right now, pointing it out. They're playing the Ontario Reign this
by
week.
Himself. No, they're not. He's just there by himself. He's at Disneyland, just hanging out.
Yeah, they wrapped up a good series against the San Diego Gulls this past weekend. Well, good for some players. They blow a 4-1 lead in the final moments of the third period and end up losing by a final score of 6-4 to the very, very lowly San Diego Gulls. The Anaheim Ducks may suck, but their farm team sucks a lot worse. The San Diego Gulls, not a great hockey team, but they somehow beat the Abbotsford Canucks yesterday. You can read more about that at CanucksArmy.com. Dave Hall is going to join us on tomorrow's show as well, and he's going to talk to us about Jonathan Lekkermäki, who, as I said, scored 2 goals on Sunday, and Aatu Ratu with 3 points on Saturday. The young guys are humming. Like, the young guys are playing really well, and that's exactly what we wanted to see out of the Abbotsford Canucks. Can we talk about the shift now, Patrick? You ready to talk about
I just want to tell everybody first, so everyone understands, Ontario, California is 49 minutes by car, current traffic conditions from the Honda Center. So the idea of them having to report, they're already reported. They're in Southern California. That's good enough.
It took me a while to realize that Ontario, California was a place. Like when it was the Ontario Reign, I was like, "Oh, that's weird that they have it all the way in Ontario. Like that's weird for the LA Kings to have." But no, Ontario, California,
Orange County, baby.
Orange County.
It's one of those big Orange County places. So there you go.
Have you ever been? Like, did you ever get to go cover a game in Anaheim?
Yes. Twice.
And what was that like?
The arena is like this. It's like this classic. It's a lot of granite. It's this like classic Hollywood like movie theater. Like the design is very old school and intentionally. The press box is kind of weird. Like it's at the back. It's at the back of the stands. There's these like windows that open up. I think it's that one. Yeah.
Really?
And then there's like this door that like opens up. So like when I would go cover a game in Orange County, I had a buddy that used to live down there, and so he'd always come to the game. And he'd come by. He'd come up the intermission. We'd like talk through the door. Like you could, it's kind of every building has its quirks, and here I'll tell a story. We got time for a story?
Absolutely, we got time for a story.
This is the state of how badly hockey men like can contemplate reality. So I don't remember which year this would have been, but I'm sitting here in California, or in the pregame meal. The downstairs is sort of big open sort of room they have. That's the pregame meal that is available for $12 or whatever. And it wasn't terribly exciting. But I also knew, and so I look over, and they're sitting there. I realize all of a sudden is like Bob Nicholson and Keith Gretzky and a certain popular former general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. And I'm going, why are they here? Like, what are they doing? And I sort of did the math and I realized the Oilers had come down. It was just the middle. I think it was, I can't remember. It would have been February, I guess. This must have been my first year. So it's like 2019. So you're coming in and it's the middle of winter in Edmonton. They came down to California for a couple days early, and they just say, let's have some fun. So Peter Chiarelli, Bob Nicholson, Keith Gretzky decide, well, let's go catch some NHL hockey action. But they're so devoid of ideas on where to eat. They go and eat the $12. It was a terrible meal. The terrible $12 meal. They could go to any steakhouse they wanted. Any fine dining. Could go over to Orange. There's nice places over in Orange. Like wherever, they go to the rink and eat the terrible meal. And it's just still burned into my brain at how little imagination these guys had.
Little imagination. That's a great story. That's a good story.
Shirley fired January 22nd, 2019. So it must have been, it was before that. So I don't even know when that would have been. But there you go.
Peter Chiarelli strikes me as a press box meal every day kind of guy.
There's some good ones. The one here is actually pretty good. There are some very good ones, but the one in Anaheim, skip it.
Fair. All right, let's get to the shift. I want to talk about this final thing for me on this game. Look
at me trying to stall.
It's not even a, oh my gosh, look how great Elias Pettersson is. It's not that. But I'm so tired of all this, oh, he's back, or look at this, like, look, he scored a goal tonight. This shift at the end of the game against the San Jose Sharks, and we're going to play it in full. And those on the podcast, don't worry, I'll talk you through it. This shift at the end of the game that he turned in is A, the most impressive thing I've seen from him all season. B, the best he's looked all season in terms, low bar, you're right, very low bar, but way more impressed by this than I am the goal against Pittsburgh, which everybody was freaking out on Twitter about. So I point out on Twitter Saturday night that, oh, look, like that was a great shift for Elias Pettersson. Like that's exactly what you want to see from him in controlling the zone, moving his feet, all that sort of stuff. You're like, oh, 11.6, he's got to do more than that. Obviously, he has to do more than that. But the more than that comes when you're playing like this. Roll the clip, Jacob. Roll the clip. Look at this. Okay, so it starts, oh, wouldn't you guess, with an Elias Pettersson.
A zone entry.
Chips it to Connor Garland, who then sends it in deep. Pettersson's the first on it, shields off an attacker, rims it back around to Connor Garland at the point. Maybe that's Filip Hronek. I don't know how short he does this. And then he cycles it around. Elias Pettersson keeps his feet moving. Okay, now watch this right here. Boom. Anticipates, picks off the San Jose clearing attempt. That's partly because the San Jose Sharks are an awful hockey team, but he still did it. Then the puck is rimmed back around. Pettersson's first on it, shovels it back to Soucy at the point. Soucy puts it back in deep. And watch Pettersson here. Connor Garland's behind the net, right? Pettersson draws attackers with him, opening up space for Pius Suter, does it again, and boom, Pius Suter scores, back of the net. Canucks take the lead. Again, doesn't pick up a point. He gets the third assist. I know people are making fun of it. Oh, whatever. That is the most impressive shift he's turned in all season. He was instrumental in that victory. That is, as Wyatt called it, our pal Wyatt Arnn over on the stand sheets called it, a huge, massive shift if he can repeat that. That's what he needs to do. Keep moving your feet.
That's like, what he has to do. That's what he needs. That's what he has to do.
Like, that he hasn't done since February. Like, he hasn't moved his feet since February like that. Like, we haven't seen a shift like that.
Dave, great. When his skating velocity gets above 50%, his shot velocity gets above 50%, then I'll point back to this one and say, David Quadrelli was right. This was the turning point in this season. Until that happens, I'm skeptical. I mean, he just hasn't showed enough. It's been terrible to watch. You're right. He did everything right there. Let's be clear, by the way. The reason why Pius Suter scores that goal is because that's where Connor Garland knows there are always openings for shooters, right? That's where Pettersson's goal was scored from, right? Like there's this soft spot in that particular area. They've identified it always works. Anyway, great. I'm happy for Elias Pettersson. I'm glad he skated hard. Let's get that every shift now.
What did you think of my call?
Yeah, well, you called the defenders attackers at one point, but it was pretty good.
All right.
And you gave Shorty a shout out. So, listen, you played the game. Well, good job. I'm proud.
I've never really done play-by-play.
It's a nightmare.
When I was a kid, I thought I wanted to do play-by-play. And honestly, like, I'm not trying
exhausting.
to. I think I could do it though. Like I've always thought I could do it.
Like, it is. It's way harder than you think it is, Quads. I've done it a few times. And like the first time I had to call a BCHL game, I was like, for the entire first period, I felt like I was 5 seconds behind the play. It is not easy.
And your throat gets tired.
Oh, that's true.
Yes, it really does. And
like I used to do a little bit of like rugby play-by-play, and I'm glad I tried it, but it wasn't something I'd ever really had ambition to do, and I didn't, I got paid. Like that was the nice thing. But other than that, like I was like, I'm glad I did it. But like, holy smoke, David, you did fine.
Thank you.
Good job.
The criticism, I'll do some self-reflection. The criticism I have for myself is I wasn't sure who was at the blue line, and I should have known that. I queued up that clip. That wasn't even a live clip. I've watched that like 5 times, but I didn't know who was at the blue line. It might have been Heronic, but maybe no, it was Garland. It was Garland. Confidently, I'll tell you, it was Connor Garland. All right. Let's get to anyone else. It's time to hear from the chat and to get anything else that's on your mind, PJ. We'll just kind of dive into it all. Let's get to anyone else, which is proudly presented by White Spot. At White Spot, they're all about enjoying great, comforting food and spending quality time with loved ones. With a new comfort menu, White Spot is focusing on cozy, satisfying flavors that are perfect to enjoy with family. Available now and developed by the White Spot culinary team, the comfort menu is filled with warm, indulgent dishes designed to make you feel right at home. The new menu features mouth-watering new additions like mini Yorkies, the braised beef burger, the home-style pot roast, and backed by popular demand, the iconic chicken pot pie. Bring your family to White Spot for a delicious meal, perfect for the season. Visit your local White Spot today. I'm sure, I don't even have to ask, your 2 children, big fans of White Spot, I'm sure.
Massive fans. Had the chicken pot pie the other day. Look at
How was it?
It's great. It's great. Yeah, enjoy
I need to have a braised beef burger. That's what I really want to have. Is braised
Go
beef
for it,
burger.
Quaz.
Yeah. Pirate Pack bets. Harman and I have been making those lately, and I'm losing. After the Flames started their season 5-0 or whatever it was they were, I bet Harman that they would make it as a wild card 2 team, and then they went on to lose like 6 straight or whatever it's been. But they beat the Devils, so when we get to our Bet 365 bet of the day, I'll be sure to point that out. That I called it once again. I could just spend anyone else updating PJ on all my correct picks for winners. I've been picking underdogs. I've been all over the place. But anyways, let's get to some anyone else's. The chat is talking a lot about Nils Höglander or Daniel Sprong getting traded for some defense help. I'm of the opinion, PJ, that you don't need to do that. We saw what the prices were for defensemen last year. Like, unless maybe if you're trying to put something together to get Rasmus Anderson, maybe you are being required to throw in like a guy like Nils Höglander, but like that's a pretty cost controlled asset for the next 3 years at $3 million. The cap's going up. That's a pretty valuable piece that I don't think the Canucks are going to be looking to move. And they ultimately, I just don't think they have to. Like the prices that were being paid at the last deadline, the Canucks can upgrade their defense without paying up that much.
Yeah, let's be clear. Like Sprong was a free agent. You could have signed him for nothing in the summer. Nothing has changed between now and last summer. So, the idea of a team going to be like, yeah, I'm trading for him now when they couldn't before, like, unlikely. You've already nailed it. They've extended Höglander. They love the cost. They love the player. Like Rick Tocchet was positively beaming about him last week. So he's a player that they want to see take the next step forward. They think his future is here. So I don't think they're going anywhere. And realistically, if there are trades happening, and Jay Pat and I talked a little bit about this when we were debating the Nils Oman question, when I said no, he won't get claimed, it's the sort of void in the system, or the gap in the system to be filled right now is centers. Like the Islanders can use a center, the Avalanche could use a center. Neither of those guys, in case people haven't noticed, we've already discussed this, play center. So I don't think they're going anywhere.
I agree with you. This one from Dan Jardine in the chat. Who are the top 3 Canucks so far this season? I have a very simple top 3, and I'll give it to you in order. PJ. In terms of importance to the team, if I'm casting 3 MVP votes in order, Quinn Hughes is number 1, Kevin Lankinen is number 2, and Connor Garland is number 3. And then I think there's a big drop off between 4. Like I don't even know who 4 is. You could throw 5 names at me, and I'd say, yeah, okay, but that's the top 3, and I don't think it's really up for debate.
I think Brock Besser's probably 4. Like just from having scored a bunch of goals. that line's obviously having some struggles because Miller's quite obviously playing through at least one, I think as many as 3 injuries. Other than that, I mean, we've been going, what the heck's wrong with Carson Soucy? And we've been discussing Tyler Myers as Tyler Myers gets discussed. Eric Branson obviously is a good story, but like he's the 5th defenseman right now. And somebody actually talked about Branson earlier. I was gonna touch in on them. But yeah, like just Branson changed the dynamic there. That's good, but that's not amazing. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think you've nailed it. The top 3 are kind of obvious. They need more from everybody. This is a team that needs more from everybody in the end if they're going to be like the team they were last year.
Okay. Let's go with this one from Brad. Actually, you know what? Let's go to this one from Paul. We'll get to Brad's in a sec. We'll start with Paul. Paul Papadoulis, great Greek name, in the chat said, kind of feels like the Canucks covered the PK hole and opened up a new hole with poor puck movement. Do you agree with that statement? I think what Paul is trying to say is like when they went out and got these guys like Desharnais, Forbort,
right,
extend Myers, they're like, okay, we're gonna make sure our penalty kill is really good. And look, like even Desharnais to some extent has been fine on the penalty kill, but Forbort stabilized it. Myers has looked good on the penalty kill. We saw that last year as well. Did they not pay enough attention to their 5-on-5 play? Those guys having to play at 5-on-5 and move the puck and not just fire it off the glass every time.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I know they do look. I mean, the moves they made last year were very focused on helping that penalty kill, and they worked. Like the penalty kill, it wasn't like league leading, but it was competent enough for a playoff team.
It was not the worst, which it was before. It was really bad.
I think on the whole, sure, they did that because they figured these guys could play the system. I mean, moving away from getting more, I guess we should say, more dynamic in how they pick their defense, their penalty killing like forward pairings, I think is a large part of the story. And just, I mean, Soucy was a huge part of the story too, right? Like Soucy was a very important player to shoring up that penalty kill. So yeah, I guess I'm still am confused, given that I know that internally they really were looking for another puck mover, and they found him, I think, in Eric Branstrom. Like Branstrom is proving to be a useful player. They're still going to look for other guys. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The $5 million hole, presumably will get filled by at least a defenseman. I mean, Nikita Zadorov got added in like the end of November last year. Don't forget, right? So the idea that they could make a trade already is not out of the realm of possibility. So yeah, to ask the question, did they prioritize one thing over another? I still don't understand. I'm not even confident in answering. I don't understand what they thought they were getting in Desharnais, given they'd been playing against him. They knew what they were getting forward. I think they saw a big defenseman they could maybe teach to play the game a little better. Desharnais is what he is. I don't get the investment there. I never got the sense that this was let's make the penalty killing good again and we'll get this big, huge guy. I think they just signed him because they thought they could make him a better 5-on-5 player, and he hasn't been.
Fair enough. Do you want to talk about the accruing cap space? We wrote about it at Canucks Army today. We broke it down.
I mean, that's a long-standing goal they've had, right? Like Patrick Allvin was asked about it last year. It's why he confirmed to me that he'd been trying to trade Pullman's contract. In fact, I think I discussed that on this very program. Did we not break that story on this program?
Oh, yeah. You got the text from Patrick, I think, right before the show started.
Yeah. So, I just confirmed it right here. So, listen, it was a long-standing ambition of theirs. It was a reason, the reason being because they couldn't, for instance, make the Tanev. Like they thought they were going to get Chris Tanev, and then they didn't because they couldn't beat the offer against the Dallas made. And if they'd been able to retain full salary, if they'd been able to take on the full salary, Chris Tanev would have been playing for the Canucks last spring. So it's things like that really drove the efforts to get rid of Pullman to become in the position they're at. And, I think as you guys quite nicely put together, like it's actually only going to get better from here because once Joshua's healthy, they're sending probably Baines down. That's clearing space for you. And once Demko returns, you can think about what you're going to do with Shilovs. Like that's going to make some dynamic. You're going to have quite a bit of space to work with, and they've never been in that. I mean, certainly these Canucks have never been in a position like that before. Jim Benning's Canucks were never in a position like that. It's a good thing.
With those moves that you just laid out, and again, folks, if you want to read more about this, you can go to CanucksArmy.com. We wrote about it today. They should have a cap hit of at least $6 million by the deadline. Like they should have that much space. So it's not
space. Yeah.
It's not a small number. Like you have the ability that's a top 6 winger. Like that's a top 4 defenseman. Like that's a lot of guys around the league that you're going to be able to just fit in without having to make that money out deal. Which obviously we saw when they had Kuzmenko on the team for the Lindholm deal. They've had to make moves like that in the past. Hell, even Mikheyev or whatever you want to talk about. They've done different things to create their cap space. Now they're able to do it. Excuse me. In-house, which it's massive. It's massive that they're even able to do this. Not to mention that they got Erik Brannstrom in the process.
Exactly. Like it was in many ways, it was a trade that it served everybody's purpose, I guess, because the Avalanche weren't going to use Brannstrom. They were probably going to lose him on waivers, and they got a draft pick out of it. And they were happy to park a problem that the Canucks had on their
existing LTIR. Yeah. And the thing is, like, someone brought this up to me. They were like, would you have done, especially if you've seen what Erik Brannstrom has done through his early parts of his Canucks career, would you have done Erik Brannstrom for a 4th round pick? And like, I thought about it. It's probably a little high just for Erik Brannstrom straight up, but with the context, like I think a 5th or 6th, what you're getting from him. So, adding on the fact that you're now getting that flexibility to do something at the deadline, I think it's massive. I think it's massive that they were able to pull this out. Okay. This one from Conversation. He said, are we ready to talk about how losing Kuzmenko has hurt the team? Your thoughts?
I was actually thinking about Kuzmenko when you were discussing making trades for Rasmussen. I was like, wouldn't it be funny if they had to take Kuzmenko back as a throw-in? I don't think it's hurt the team. I mean, he wasn't doing that much. Though, don't forget that he was given lots of opportunity. He was playing with Pettersson when Pettersson was playing well. Right. And he wasn't producing. He was on the power play. He'd fallen back to earth. He was never going to be a 40-goal scorer again or whatever it was. He had as good an entry to the NHL as possible. If he had been here, if they had waited a week longer to re-sign him here in Vancouver in 2023, I can pretty much guarantee you that Rick Tocchet would have said, no, don't do this. Trade this guy. Like, move on. And you think the value they would have gotten to trade at that point. But anyway, they held on to him. They gave it a go. Didn't work. They flipped him away. Patrick Johnston has shown an ability to get out from problems he's made for himself or trades that didn't work or player acquisitions that didn't work. No, it doesn't. It's not a loss. There's not a loss there.
Kuzmenko is more valuable. The easiest way I put it, Patrick, is Kuzmenko was super valuable when he's making under $1 million at his current cap hit. Like they're not missing him. No, maybe they missed the player on the power play, but again,
I think the cap hit is what you just nailed it there. I mean, this is the thing that I often lament, like that we have to even think about these terms, that people should just be able to think of, does the player fit? Not does the player and his cap hit fit? But they've got Daniel Sprong. Like, how much of a difference is there really between Daniel Sprong and Andrei Kuzmenko? Be real.
Exactly. We've talked about that this year. I think we've made that comparison as well. Okay, anything else that you wanted to get to before we get to our Bet365 bet of the day and wrap it up here? Did you have anything else?
There was one earlier. Like, I like the point about where the heck is that? I'm just scrolling up here. Is there any? From Brad. Is there any way you can justify taking Brannstrom out of the lineup given the way the other Fortier is playing? I thought that was great. No, he's in there. Like he's like we've Jay Pat and I was talking about this. I want to say a week ago. Yeah. Now I can't remember. Time's already smushing into one thing for me. But we basically said he's like, no, he's played awesome. Like, and I think I put him. What does he have to? He goes, he just said keep doing his doing basically. And then Jeff was like, well, can he play on the right? And he goes, yes. So. This is a player that showed well. There was a lot of numbers to back up his performance in Ottawa. I talked to a few people that watched him in Ottawa, and they're like, listen, part of the story was it wasn't a very good team. He never got to play with a real partner, so he's playing Vinny DeHarnay. But, like, you think about him playing with a guy like Forbort or play with, say they trade for someone, a right shot D. Like, he's in a situation, I think, that actually suits his talents really well. There's a reason why Colorado signed him, because they're like, this guy might fit, and that's a pretty good team. Brandstrom's playing exactly as well as you would expect he was if you were paying attention. If you weren't paying attention, you might not think very highly of him. And he's changed the entire discussion there. They're now a lot closer to where they need to be. They still need Carson Soucy to be the player that he was last year, at least the player he was when they signed him. He was better than we expected last season, but they need Soucy to find his way back to that. That's the other thing. I mean, that to me is the real story in the top four right now. It's not, Brandstrom's a great story, changed the dynamic, but in the end, they need Carson Soucy to be the guy that they brought him in to be.
Absolutely. Could have said it better myself, so I won't try to. But what I will give you is my pick today. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Tonight, it's on Prime. The Edmonton Oilers and New Jersey Devils face off. Oilers back at home. They're second of a back-to-back. So you're assuming Stuart Skinner won't get the start? I would think it's going to be Calvin Pickard tonight. Plus 110. You can get the Oilers to win tonight against the New Jersey Devils, who I correctly said would lose. Not only did they lose, they got shut out by my Calgary Flames. What was it, Saturday night? Yeah, Saturday. I can't remember when it was. But anyways.
Come on, Dave.
Anyways, you should have heard my reasoning, PJ. It was so funny because the Flames were such underdogs. I was like, well, the Devils are riding hot after a 6-0 win. Probably went up to Cowboys, had a day off in Calgary. I'm sure they're going to be not ready to play. Let's put it that way the next night. And sure enough, they get shut out 3-0 by the Calgary Flames. But tonight we're taking the Oilers at plus 110 odds against those same New Jersey Devils. You can get that over at Bet365. That was our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. All right, Patrick, final thoughts?
It's great being here. Beautiful day. Canucks looking, listen, Canucks know where they need to get. They're playing another not great opponent tomorrow. They need to start racking up wins. I mean, it's a huge time of the year. They need to rack up points, pick up points, no matter who they're playing against. And they're going to need to find their way to play against top teams like the Carolina Hurricanes and the New Jersey Devils, which, they've been shown wanting. But listen, they've started the season well. They're in the mix for the Pacific Division. Right now, they're looking pretty good. Like, let's not lose sight of that, but also know that the standards are high, and they set the standards last year, and they have a long way to go.
Couldn't put it better myself. So again, I won't try to. PJ, thanks for doing this. You're going to be back on Friday. We're going to be in studio. Harman's in tomorrow. People are asking about who the fill-in is. It's Harman tomorrow. Harman had practice today. Well, He was at Canucks practice.
He's filling in for himself.
Yes. So Harman will be here tomorrow. Wednesday. Who's hosting Wednesday with me? PJ, I might be texting you again. I don't know who's filling in on
Wednesday. Yeah, we'll talk.
We'll talk.
Yeah, PJ's got a busy week because I think you're on Rink-Wide again tomorrow.
I'm filling in for Irf.
Friend of the show, friend of Canucks Army, Patrick Johnston. We will close it out there. For my co-host, Patrick Johnston, our technical producer, Jacob Lazar, my name is Dave Quadrelli. Thank you so much for listening to our episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.